Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Firewalls Don't Stop Dragons. I'm your host, Kerry Parker. Today we have episode 451 for October 20th, 2025. And as promised, we've got a news show for you. I know it's been a while. There were a lot of stories. There weren't a lot of huge stories. So I think we're in good shape. We're going to start first with the update on Windows 10, which the support ended for that last week. So I'll just give you an update of where things stand and what you could do about that. Some seniors were targeted in a global Facebook scam, spreading some Android malware. Tile tracking tags can be exploited by tech-savvy stalkers, according to some researchers. Shiny hunters leaked a bunch of data that they said they had, and apparently they did because they've started leaking it. They tried to extort money from the third party that held that data, and they said no. And so they have started releasing that data. There was a pretty big hack of the Discord service, and it just goes to show why we don't want to be holding on to very sensitive personal data. And Apple and Google have been reluctantly forced to comply with a new Texas age verification law, and they only have about 10 weeks to do it. And now California is jumping on the age verification bandwagon. They've just passed their own bill. It is different than some of the other ones we've seen and marginally better. I mean, none of this stuff is good, but they did it in an interesting way, and we're going to talk about that. But we actually have some good news this week, and some really good news is that thanks to citizen protests, like from people like you, the chat control bill that was set in front of the European Union has failed. That is really big news. Well, I'll tell you a little bit more about that. Also, the California governor has signed a new bill into law that will be very good for privacy. And also, California has levied its biggest ever fine under the California Privacy Protection Act. And for the tip of the week, this week, we'll get to the next segment of my kind of long-going series about finding and dealing with some really old online accounts. So, lots to talk about. Let's get to it. All right, first up, an article here from Ars Technica about Windows 10 support ending. I've been telling you about this for some time. Microsoft has decided to no longer support Windows 10, trying to get everybody to move to Windows 11. Unfortunately, there are a lot of computers out there that don't have the technical specs necessary to upgrade to Windows 11, and they will basically be orphaned and abandoned. You do have a couple options, and we'll talk about those here in a second. All right, so from Ars Technica, and note that this was published last Tuesday on October 14th, because it says today, and that would be last Tuesday, is the official end of support date for Microsoft's Windows 10. That doesn't mean these PCs will suddenly stop working, but if you don't take action, it does mean your PC has received its last regular security patches, and that Microsoft is washing its hands of technical support. This end of support date comes about a decade after the initial release of Windows 10, which is typical for most Windows versions. But it comes just 4 years after Windows 10 was replaced by Windows 11, a version with stricter system requirements that left many older but still functional PCs with no officially supported upgrade path. As a result, Windows 10 still runs on roughly 40% of the world's Windows PCs, or around a third of US-based PCs, according to StatCounter data. But this end of support date also isn't set in stone. Home users with Windows 10 PCs can enroll in Microsoft's Extended Security Updates, or ESU program, which extends the support timeline by another year. We've published directions on how to do this here, and that is a link, which you can get to if you go to the show notes and click on this article. While you do need one of the Microsoft accounts that the company is always pushing, it's relatively trivial to enroll in the ESU program for free. And I went to that article and I pulled out those options for you here. Basically, you've got three options. For $30, you could pay a one-time fee and you will get into this ESU program. Now, Microsoft has some weird thing called Microsoft Reward Points. I don't know what those things are or how you get them, but you can in Windows somehow look up how many reward points you have somewhere. It's probably under your Microsoft account. And if you have at least 1,000 reward points, then you can redeem those to get into the ESU program. And also you can, if you use Windows Backup app, Apparently, this will also qualify you. And their article says, of these, the backup app is the most painless. It backs up some saved credentials, some Windows settings, and some Windows apps to your account. It can also back up folders you specify if your account has the space for them. And the paltry 5 gigabytes you get for free won't be good for much, but it's there. So you do have a few options, and I definitely recommend that you avail yourself of one of those. All right, there's one more paragraph from this article. It says, obviously, Microsoft's preferred upgrade path would be either an upgrade to Windows 11 for PCs that meet the requirements, or an upgrade to a new PC that does support Windows 11. It's also still possible, at least for now, to install and run Windows 11 on unsupported PCs. Your day-to-day experience will generally be pretty good, though installing Microsoft's major yearly updates, like the upcoming Windows 11 25H2 update, can be a bit of a pain. For new Windows 11 users, we'll publish an update to our Windows 11 cleanup guide soon. These steps help to minimize the upsells and annoyances that Microsoft has baked into its latest OS. So yeah, Microsoft has really gotten bad with pushing a bunch of their junk and advertising, and it's just gotten horrible. I'm happy that I'm on an Apple computer, and I think you would be too if this is something that might get you to change to Mac. It has a lot less of upselling ad crap and general bloatware. Okay, so anyway, the main requirement for being able to upgrade Windows 10 PCs to Windows 11 is the existence of this thing called a TPM 2.0. That's a trusted platform module. While this is a dedicated hardware chip on some PCs, others implement this actually in firmware. So in this case, it's possible that your PC could be upgraded to support TPM 2.0 just by updating your BIOS. And I'm not going to get into all the details of that here, but basically you need to figure out what motherboard is in your PC and whether the BIOS update would give you a firmware-based TPM 2.0 functionality. If so, that would magically make your Windows 10 PC suddenly compatible with Windows 11, and then you can upgrade for free. But for everybody else, check the article that I just talked about for details. And again, if you find the links inside, you can click through to the one that tells you how to get the Microsoft reward points and all that crap. But you really need to do this. You definitely, your PC is a ticking time bomb if it's not getting any security updates, because guaranteed there are still bugs in that software. And if they're not getting fixed, that makes you vulnerable. So if you're going to stick with Windows 10 for another year, find one of these methods to do it. Otherwise, and regardless, you need to be thinking about how you're going to get to a Windows 11 supported PC sometime in the next year. Honestly, I was really hoping Microsoft was going to cave on this. They were getting a lot of blowback. And who knows, maybe they still will cave in some way. Maybe they'll just give everybody 1 year of ESU for free without having to jump through hoops. I don't know. But nevertheless, the writing is on the wall here. If you have a Windows 10 PC, you need to get to Windows 11 at some point very soon. All right, moving on. Next up, this is from The Record, and it's about a new scam going around on Facebook. Researchers have uncovered a scam campaign that uses Facebook groups promoting social activities for seniors to trick victims into installing Android malware on their devices. The scheme first surfaced in Australia in August when users reported suspicious groups advertising dance events, day trips, and community gatherings for older people. Researchers at Dutch cybersecurity firm ThreatFabric later identified dozens of similar groups across Facebook, many relying on AI-generated content to lure victims into downloading malicious apps. Since then, such operations have been spotted in Singapore, Malaysia, Canada, South Africa, and the UK. In a report on Tuesday, ThreatFabric warned that the malware at the center of the campaign, dubbed DATZBRO, DATZBRO, poses a global risk after its builder and command and control software leaked online, making it freely available to criminals worldwide. And this is a quote from their report. It says, quote, "By focusing on seniors, fraudsters exploit trust and community-oriented activities to lure victims into installing malware. What begins as seemingly harmless event promotion on Facebook can escalate into device takeover, credential theft, and financial fraud," unquote. Although the groups were largely filled with AI-generated posts, the content appeared convincing enough to draw hundreds of responses. Once victims showed interest, fraudsters moved conversations to Messenger or WhatsApp, where they shared links to fake registration websites. These sites encouraged users to download a quote-unquote community app to sign up and track activities. In reality, clicking the Google Play button triggered the installation of DATSbro, either directly or via a known Android dropper called Zombinder, which can bypass security protections on newer devices. Threat Fabric said DATSbro combines spyware capabilities such as an audio recording, camera access, and file theft with banking Trojan features, including remote access, key logging, and phishing aimed at stealing banking and cryptocurrency credentials. For example, the malware can capture passwords for services like Alipay, China's largest mobile payments platform, and WeChat, the country's dominant messaging and social app, as well as device PIN codes. All right, so there was an update from Google about this. Google, of course, makes Android. And it says Android users are automatically protected against known versions of this malware by Google Play Protect, which is on by default on Android devices with Google Play services, which is pretty much all of them. Google Play Protect can warn users or block apps known to exhibit malicious behavior, even when those apps come from sources outside of Play. Okay, so that sounds like kind of a non-answer. I guess what they're saying is that if you have your regular Android phone with regular Google Play services on the device, then you should at least be warned before you install something like this. Of course, it sounds like you could probably just bypass those warnings and do it anyway, which maybe some people have been doing, but obviously, the big takeaway here is don't do that. If you get a warning from Google saying this is a potentially suspicious app or we don't know where it came from, that is your strong hint to not proceed. And also, make sure that your Android operating system is up to date. And if you haven't already, turn on automatic updates for sure. And also, if you're ever told to download an app and you really want to actually install that app, you want to give it a try, don't use whatever links or buttons or things that they give you. Note the name of the app, go look for it yourself on the Play Store, and if you don't find it, maybe that should be telling you that app is not legit. All right, this next one comes from Wired, and it's about tile tracking tags. And it's a little bit longer article, but it's got some good stuff in it. And then we're going to talk at the end about how this compares to like Apple AirTags. So from Wired, it says, tile trackers used to locate everything from lost keys to stolen pets are used by more than 88 million people worldwide, according to Tile's parent company, Life360. But researchers who examined the tracking technology have found design flaws that would let stalkers, or potentially the manufacturer itself, track the location of Tile users and their devices, contrary to claims the company has made about the security and privacy of its devices. The researchers, Akshaya Kumar, Anna Raymaker, and Michael Spector of the Georgia Institute of Technology, found that each tag broadcasts an unencrypted MAC address and unique ID that can be picked up by other Bluetooth devices or radio frequency antennas in a tag's vicinity to track the movements of the tag and its owner. The location of a tag, its MAC address, and unique ID also gets sent unencrypted to Tile's servers, where the researchers believe this information is stored in clear text, giving Tile the ability to track the location of tags and their owners, even though the company claims it does not have this capability. The researchers say this would give Tile the ability to conduct mass surveillance on its users and potentially provide that information to law enforcement and others. The researchers also found that Tile's anti-stalking protection can be easily undermined if a stalker enables an anti-theft feature that Tile offers with its tags. Additionally, someone could falsely frame a Tile owner for stalking by recording the unencrypted broadcasts their Tile device makes and replaying those broadcasts in the vicinity of another Tile user, making it seem like the former is stalking the latter. The researchers reported their findings to Tile's parent company, Life360, last November, but they say the company stopped communicating with them in February. Wired sent Life360 an email asking for a response to the issue raised by the researchers, but a spokesperson sent a reply that did not explicitly address the problems. The email said only that the company had, quote, made a number of improvements, unquote, since receiving the researchers' report without specifying what those were. Tile sells standalone tags, but its tracking technology is also embedded in laptops, headphones, smartwatches, and other products made by companies like Dell, Bose, and Fitbit. The researchers reverse-engineered Tile's protocol, an Android mobile app used by the Tile Mate, the company's most popular tracker tag. They say their findings may not apply to other models of Tile tags or the Tile technology used in products made by third parties. Tile trackers operate similarly to tracking tags made by Apple, Google, and Samsung. but Tile's system differs in important ways. Like the others, Tile tags are battery-powered and use Bluetooth to broadcast their location to a user's phone. Users can slip a tag into a briefcase, luggage, or vehicle, or attach it to keys, a phone, laptop, or even a pet collar to track the location of these items. Each Tile tag broadcasts the tag's MAC address, that's media access control, and a unique ID, which changes periodically. If an item paired with the tag goes missing, the owner, using their Tile app, can instruct the tag to emit a sound to locate it. For items further away, the system relies on the network of phones belonging to other Tile users. These also pick up the broadcast of any Tile device near them. And since 2021, Ring cameras, Echo devices, and Tile tags have been integrated into Amazon's Sidewalk network, meaning Ring and Echo devices can pick up the location of Tile tags as well. Each time these devices pick up the broadcast from a Tile tag, the location, MAC address, and unique ID of that tag get sent to a Tile server where it's stored in a database, the researchers found. The owner of a lost tag and item can then use their Tile app to query the database for their latest location. The problem, according to the researchers, lies in how Tile has implemented this system. Tile claims that user information transmitted across its network can't be seen by anyone. And this is a quote from Tile. It says, quote, "You are the only one with the ability to see your Tile location and your device location," unquote. But the researchers found that the MAC address and unique ID that a Tile tag broadcasts is not encrypted, allowing someone in the vicinity of a tag with a Tile app on their phone or a radio frequency antenna to intercept this information as it's transmitted and track the location of the tag and associated item or its owner. Other tag makers replace the MAC address with a rotating unique ID and only transmit the ID. By changing the ID periodically, someone recording broadcasts from a tag cannot easily link multiple broadcasts to the same tag to track the movement of that tag and associated item or owner. But because Tile's system transmits both the MAC address and the unique ID and does not encrypt this transmission, someone can intercept this information. Tile's unique ID also rotates. It changes every 15 minutes if the tag is near the owner's phone, or once in 24 hours if not. But because the MAC address is static and does not change, it can be used to track a tag regardless of the changing ID. But even if Tile chose not to transmit the MAC address, the researchers say the way Tile generates the changing ID is not secure and can still be used to track a tag. And just real quick, my guess is that that means that whatever their algorithm is to rotate the changing ID is predictable. So this is a quote from one of the researchers, quote, "An attacker only needs to record one message from the device to fingerprint it for the rest of its lifetime," unquote. And who also says this creates a risk of systemic surveillance for anyone whose tag is caught up in a scan. Law enforcement could potentially use this to identify someone in an area that has a Tile tag or Tile-enabled device. And because this location information seems likely to be stored unencrypted on Tile's server, researchers say Tile could also track the location of tags or share this information with any third party. The researchers say many of the problems they found could be addressed simply by Tile encrypting the broadcast from its tags, and they don't understand why the company apparently hasn't followed the example of its competitors. Okay, so yes, it really looks like Tile has not done a good job designing this, and they've got lots of other great examples to work from. Apple, from what I've read, has done a much better job of this. My understanding of the way Apple's AirTags work is they really put in the effort to make it privacy preserving and yet still work. And it just seems like, I don't know, Tile just didn't spend enough time designing this. And furthermore, once this was explained to them last November, they seem to be totally ignoring it. It really doesn't sound like Tile's going to be making any changes, though maybe after this article, maybe they'll get more pressure to do so. If you are a person with a Tile tag or a Tile tracking enabled device, as long as you keep those devices within Bluetooth range of your phone and the Tile app is running on your phone, they should automatically update their software. So hopefully if Tile fixes all of this and pushes out new software, all your devices will get those updates. These tracking things are really handy. I use them in my luggage and my backpack, and they've been great. And Apple has gone to great lengths, actually even working with Google to try to prevent these things to be used for stalking. And it's really honestly pretty impressive. Do they still have problems? Yes. But these Tile ones definitely have much bigger problems. All right, next up, this one's from HackRead. I don't often quote these guys, but it's about a pretty big hack of personal user data. And they tried to extort money, which would have supposedly prevented them from leaking all this data. They were not paid, and so they're now starting to leak that data. So, again, from HackRead. On October 3rd, 2025, HackRead published an in-depth report in which hackers claimed to have stolen 989 million records, in other words, almost a billion records, from 39 major companies worldwide by exploiting a Salesforce vulnerability. The group demanded that Salesforce and the affected firms enter negotiations before October 10th, warning that if their demands were ignored, they would release the entire dataset. The hackers, identifying themselves as Scattered Lapsus Hunters, a collective said to combine elements of Scattered Spider, Lapsus, and Shiny Hunters, have now published data allegedly belonging to 6 of the 39 targeted companies. The companies named in the leak are as follows: Fujifilm, Gap Incorporated, Vietnam Airlines, NG Resources, that's ENGIE, Qantas Airlines, and Albertsons Companies. Albertsons is a grocery store chain. While the impacted companies are the only ones who can verify the breach, HackRead has carried out an in-depth analysis of the leaked data, and it looks legitimate. In all 6 leaks, the record contains personal details of customers, business, including email addresses, full names, addresses, passport numbers, and phone numbers. The dataset leaked from Qantas Airlines Limited is substantial in size, weighing in at 153 gigabytes. The files are in JSON format and contain over 5 million records. The data was published on October 10th, 2025, and marked as public by the threat actors. This dataset combines personally identifiable information with customer loyalty and internal business data, making it a serious exposure if authentic. Here's what the leaked data contains. And there were actually 23 different fields here, but I'm just going to tick off maybe the top 10. Gender, country, full name, date of birth, email address, frequent flyer number, corporate and tax information fields, company-related email and phone fields, last travel and travel-related tracking fields, and residential address. And now here's the full list of 39 companies identified as victims in the alleged Salesforce data breach. And I'll just go through the ones that I haven't already read. KFC, which, Kentucky Fried Chicken, ASICS, the shoe company, I guess, UPS, IKEA, Petco, Cisco, and that's CISCO, the tech company, not the, I think, chicken company, SYSCO. Anyway, McDonald's, Cartier, Adidas, Instacart, Fujifilm, Marriott, Walgreens, PandoraNet, Chanel, CarMax, Disney, Hulu, TransUnion, Aeromexico, Toyota Motor Company, Stellantis, Republic Services, AAA, or I think American Automobile Association, Saks Fifth, 1-800-Accountant, NMH, which I'm not familiar with some of these last ones here, Instructure.com, Google AdSense, HBO Max, FedEx, Air France and KLM, Home Depot, and Kering, which is, I guess, the parent company of Gucci and some others. Now, each of these things that I just listed off had a size next to each of these, like how big the data set was, and it varied quite a bit. So it's quite possible that the data released from some of these companies isn't like all their customer data. It might be some subset. But some of these were pretty big, and text files compressed quite a bit. So this is still a heck of a lot of data. Anyway, back to the article. While more data was initially expected, the hackers announced on Telegram that they will not be releasing any additional information, stating, quote, "A lot of people are asking what else will be leaked. Nothing else will be leaked. Everything that was leaked, and we have nothing else to leak. And obviously the things we have cannot be leaked for obvious reasons," unquote. Very strange. This statement leaves the future of the remaining data uncertain. However, what has already been leaked is damaging enough. If verified, the release of these databases could have serious consequences across several industries. Airlines, retailers, and energy companies store large volumes of sensitive customer and business information, including personal details, contact data, and internal records. The exposure of such data puts affected individuals at risk of identity theft and fraud, while also creating potential reputational and financial damages for the companies involved. Since these leaks are linked to earlier claims about a Salesforce vulnerability, the incident also raises questions about the security practices of third-party platforms that manage and store such extensive data. So, yeah, this is where we are now. I mean, A lot of companies contract third parties to manage customer data or customer interaction data. And in this case, that company was Salesforce, which is a huge company. And they were apparently hacked. And through that hack of Salesforce, they were able to get access to the customer data of these 39 companies. And because Salesforce refused to pay the ransom, which, that is a morally defensible position. A lot of people say that by paying off these ransom, you're just encouraging more such attacks. But anyway, the upshot is that data has now been released, or a large portion of that data. It's really odd that they're not going to release the rest, and I don't know how they were able to get a hold of the size of these. Maybe this is the bad guy saying this is how much data they had from each of these companies. And so we don't really know that they have that data. It seems really odd to me that they wouldn't release everything, or maybe at this point say, there were 6 companies. If you don't want the rest released, let's negotiate. But anyway, I'm not sure what's going to go on there. I'd say it's still possible that more data will get released. Maybe they're back into negotiations with Salesforce trying to get money. I'll keep you posted on any further developments in regards to this. But if you're in the U.S. and you haven't frozen your credit yet, you should really do that. We should do that, all of us, regardless. It's free. It's easy. You can stake your claim by making sure that you've claimed your account, which already exists at the big 4 credit bureaus: Equifax, TransUnion, Experian, and Innovis. That's INNOVAIS. I do have an article on this on my website. If you search for credit freeze, it's got all this information. And there's just really no reason not to do it. So also, if you think you might be part of this data breach, just be extra vigilant in the next, 6 to 12 months, because the bad guys who are getting this information are surely going to try to use it to scam you, phish you, or try to get into your accounts. All right, next up, this is from 404 Media, and it's about a pretty serious hack of Discord. And if you're not familiar with Discord, it's a messaging, like private forum service. It's kind of hard to describe. It was, I think, originally used mainly for gaming. So it does actually have audio and capability, like you might get on Discord with your friends, so that when you're playing a game remotely, you can talk to each other. But it's also a very high-featured private messaging service. Like you can create a group of friends, and within that group you can have messages to each other, but you can separate those messages into different channels with different names. You can set up all sorts of crazy permissions. I use it with my patrons. It's got a lot of really great features that I haven't seen anywhere else. But they were also involved in a pretty nasty hack. So let me read this article from 404. A catastrophic breach has impacted Discord user data, including selfies and identity documents uploaded as part of the app's verification process, email addresses, phone numbers, and approximately where the user lives, and much more. The hack, carried out by a group that is attempting to extort Discord, shows in stark terms the risk of tech companies collecting users' identity documents, and specifically in the context of verifying their age. Discord started asking users in the UK, for example, to upload a selfie with their ID as part of the country's age verification law recently. And we've been talking about that law in the show. And a quote from one of the hackers who wrote in a Telegram channel, quote, "This is about to get really ugly," unquote. A source with knowledge of the breach confirmed to 404 Media that the data is legitimate. 404 Media granted the source anonymity to speak candidly about a sensitive incident. Earlier this month, Discord announced hackers had breached one of its third-party vendors that supports its customer service efforts. That vendor, which the hackers suggest is Zendesk, handles age-related appeals, Discord said. On Wednesday, I think last week or the week before, Discord told The Verge it has identified around 70,000 users who may have had their government ID photos exposed as part of the breach. In their Telegram group, the hackers took issue with Discord earlier, saying the breach impacted, quote, "a small number of government ID images," unquote. The hackers posted a screenshot of what they presented as the size of the stolen data, 1.5 terabytes. Then on Wednesday, the hackers started posting Discord samples of user data. That included selfies of people holding up their ID documents. At least 2 of these are from people holding identity documents from the US and Canada. Some of these are images where the individual person is clearly visible. Others are screenshots of larger folders containing thumbnails of images. Other data the hackers posted include a spreadsheet of 1,000 users' email addresses, usernames, a true or false flag as to whether they have been verified, their town, state, or county and country, partial phone numbers — the spreadsheet includes the area code and the last few digits of the number — whether the person has multi-factor authentication enabled, and the last time they were seen on Discord. Digital rights activists and online speech experts have long warned about this exact scenario: the privacy risks involved in handing over one's ID to a platform, specifically taking companies at their word that they're capable of safeguarding users' data, outweigh any supposed benefits they promise. Those experts have especially included the adult industry, which has been targeted by age verification lobbyists for years, as age verification laws passed across the country beginning in 2022 and have spread to more than 30 states since. Requiring platforms to take visitors' government-issued ID or biometric data, including the kinds of selfies that are exposed in this breach, is ineffective at preventing minors from accessing adult material, as they're pushed to more extreme, less regulated or moderated platforms where administrators don't care about complying with U.S. law or simply use a VPN. As age verification legislation continues to spread, it's only become more all-encompassing, requiring all sites and platforms, not just ones that are mostly porn, to verify ages or face heavy fines or jail time. Okay, so this article is longer, but that was the meat of it. There are so many things wrong with this. First of all, the whole age verification thing. We've talked about it on the show before. We actually have 2 more stories about this today. And again, we understand why they're doing this and why they think this is a good idea, but it just won't work. And it's fraught with problems, this being one of them. Discord, through a third party, because Discord doesn't have the capability to do this, they hired a third party to do these age verification things. They did those age verification things by having people upload a selfie with their government issue ID in the picture, and they should have just used it long enough to verify their age, made a note of that age, or at least made a note of the fact that they're over 18, basically as little personal information as possible, and then deleted those images. Why were they still holding on to those images? But because they did, they were hacked, and now they are in the hands of the bad guys. But this whole age verification thing is going to be a real problem. I don't think we're going to be able to stop it anytime soon, because it's rolling out everywhere in different ways, which is going to make it even harder to comply with. But a lot of politicians see this as a silver bullet, and it really just isn't. This is going to cause a lot of problems, a lot of privacy problems. There's going to be data breaches like this one. It's going to be a nightmare. So, speaking of which, let me get to 2 more stories about age verification laws. And this one is from Ars Technica, and it's about Apple and Google being forced to reluctantly comply with a new Texas age verification law. Apple yesterday announced a plan to comply with a Texas age verification law and warned that changes required by the law will reduce privacy for app users. And this is a quote from Apple, quote, "Beginning January 1st of 2026, and that's like 10 weeks from now, a new state law in Texas, SB 2420, introduces age assurance requirements for app marketplaces and developers. While we share the goal of strengthening kids' online safety, we are concerned that SB 2024 impacts the privacy of users by requiring the collection of sensitive, personally identifiable information to download any app, even if the user simply wants to check the weather or sports scores," unquote. The Texas App Store Accountability Act requires app stores to verify users' ages and imposes restrictions on those under 18. Apple said that developers will have to, quote, "adopt new capabilities and modify behavior within their apps to meet their obligations under the law," unquote. Apple's post noted that similar laws will take effect later in 2026 in Utah and Louisiana. Google also recently announced plans for complying with the 3 state laws and said the new requirements reduce user privacy. And this is a quote from Google, and they say, quote, "While we have user privacy and trust concerns with the new verification laws, Google Play is designing APIs, systems, and tools to help you meet your obligations," unquote. And this was a note to Google developers. The Utah law is scheduled to take effect May 7th, 2026, while the Louisiana law will take effect July 1st in 2026. And this is another quote from Google. "The Texas, Utah, and Louisiana laws, quote, impose significant new requirements on many apps that may need to provide age-appropriate experiences to users in these states. These requirements include ingesting users' age ranges and parental approval status for significant changes from app stores and notifying app stores of significant changes, unquote. Apple and Google both announced new features to help developers comply. And now this is a quote from Apple, quote, "Once this law goes into effect, users located in Texas who create a new Apple account will be required to confirm whether they are 18 years or older. All new Apple accounts for users under the age of 18 will be required to join a family sharing group, and parents or guardians will need to provide consent for all App Store downloads, app purchases, and transactions using the Apple's in-app purchase system by the minor," unquote. Apple said it will update an API and introduce a new API to help developers comply in what the company called a, quote, "privacy-preserving way," unquote, and promised more details and technical documentation this fall. The changes will help developers obtain users' age categories and manage significant changes as required by Texas state law. Google outlined its concerns about the Utah law in a March 2025 post, and they said, quote, "The bill requires app stores to share if a user is a kid or a teenager with all app developers, effectively millions of individual companies, without parental consent or rules on how the information is used. That raises real privacy and safety risks, like the potential for bad actors to sell the data or use it for other nefarious purposes," unquote. Google called the data sharing unnecessary, saying that, quote, "A weather app doesn't need to know if a user is a kid," unquote. While the requirements are limited to several states for now, U.S. Representative John James of Michigan and Senator Mike Lee of Utah have proposed a U.S. law to make similar rules apply nationwide. Lee argued that age verification and parental consent are needed because, quote, "Big tech has profited from app stores through which children in America and across the world access violent and sexual material while risking contact with online predators," unquote. Apple and Google both provide optional tools that let parents control what content their children can access. So, yeah, basically, Apple and Google both already have parental control stuff built in their devices, and they're basically giving parents the tools that they need to control what their kids do on their devices. These politicians are saying that's not good enough, and so here we are. This is really catching fire. It is traveling everywhere, and these laws have passed muster at the Supreme Court, or they've been allowed to take effect anyway. And so we're going to start seeing a lot of these. A lot of other states are just going to copy the existing laws that have been vetted through the courts and say, we want that too. You're going to start seeing this everywhere. And this means that everybody, not just kids, everybody is going to have to prove their identity and their age to these platforms. And now that information is potentially going to be known by all the app developers, maybe the people that they're advertising to. It's a privacy nightmare, and it's not going to fix the problem. These kids will find a way to get to this material. Just using a VPN, if you appear to be outside of the jurisdiction of these laws by virtue of using a VPN that places you somewhere else geographically on the map, you will not be subject to these restrictions. Kids know this. They are really smart. Once one kid in class figures out how to find a free VPN that they can put on their phone that allows them to download whatever the heck they want without being challenged for their age, they're going to do it. And then in the process, we are going to catch up in this net lots of perfectly fine applications, some of which kids will want to have access to. And a lot of things that are considered quote-unquote porn or quote-unquote adult are topics and information that kids under 18 still need access to. This is a total mess. I may at some point need to do a whole show on this and get an expert on to talk about it, because it's gotten really bad, and it's just going to get worse. I cannot believe that this law just passed and Apple and Google have like 10 weeks to comply. I don't think it's really going to be done by then. Even if Apple and Google manage to update all of their operating system software and App Store software and all these APIs to make the tools available, all the developers still need to change their code to comply to that, and they're going to have even less time to do it. Apparently, Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, actually called the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, directly and asked him not to sign this bill, or at least to make some changes, but was completely rebuffed. Now, the article did make a point of saying that this is only going to be for new accounts, so I'm not sure how that works, but I will say this. If you need to get some sort of quote-unquote adult app, Or you just want to be able to get an app without having to declare your age and upload an ID of yourself, for example, and you live in Texas, go get it before the end of the year. And if you want to set up a new Apple account, I would also do that before the end of this year. If you do some of that now, maybe you can avoid having to deal with it when the law goes into effect. All right, so we're not done. I've got one more article about a new age gating law, and this one's out of California. Now, California is good about privacy. It's probably the best state in the U.S. when it comes to privacy law, thanks to the CCPA and the CPRA, the California Consumer Privacy Act and the California Privacy Rights Act, something like that. But they don't get everything right, and they are also trying to enact a new age gating law. Now, the one that California is doing has a more interesting approach to it that is trying to preserve privacy and reduce the amount of information that is being collected and reduce the amount of age gating going on, but it's still fraught with problems. Anyway, this is from The Verge. Let me tell you what's going on there. California joins a growing group of states with a new internet age gating law after Governor Gavin Newsom signed AB 1040, the Digital Age Assurance Act. The law mandates that device operating systems and app stores require users to enter their age or date of birth when setting up a new phone or computer. The new rules are slated to take effect on January 1st, 2027, so that's at least a year away. And for devices set up prior to that date, the OS provider, like Apple or Google, must come up with a way for users to enter their ages by July 1st that year. So I guess what that's saying is it's going to go into effect January 1st, 2027, but it will have some retroactive effects as well. Negligent violations of the law could cost companies up to $2,500 per child impacted, and intentional violations could go up to $7,500 per child. The law still shields the companies from liability for erroneous age signals as long as they make a good faith effort to comply. California's new rules are the latest in a wave of new age assurance laws sweeping the country. Utah became the first state to pass an App Store age verification law, followed by Texas and Louisiana. Meta notably broke from tech peers to support such bills, but put the onus on app stores run by Apple and Google rather than developers like itself. But they were initially pushed by parent advocates who have become some of the leading voices in passing a range of kids' safety laws in the U.S. AB 1043 notably gained support from not only Meta, but also Google, which would likely be regulated under the act. Google's Senior Director of Government Affairs and Public Policy, Karim Ghanem, called it, quote, one of the most thoughtful approaches we've seen thus far to the challenges of keeping kids safe, recognizing that it's a shared responsibility across the ecosystem, unquote, in a statement included in a press release by the Democratic Assemblymaker who led the bill, Buffy Wicks. Unlike some of the other laws, the California measure does not require parental consent for app downloads. It also doesn't force users to upload sensitive documents like government IDs, which caused uproar in the UK over the implementation of the Online Safety Act. But the bill still lacks some key stakeholder support. Apple has not gotten behind the bill like its peers, and the Motion Picture Association, which advocates for the film and television industry, urged lawmakers to reject the bill, according to Politico, because it might create confusion among streaming accounts where parents and kids have different profiles. Wicks told Politico she'd work to fine-tune outstanding concerns with the bill next year. Okay, so it sounds like they are still open for tweaking this bill, which is good. And the California version of this age verification law is interesting. What it sounds like they basically want you to do is when you set up a new phone or a new account or a new computer, if you are not over 18, then a parent or guardian basically has to set up the account on that machine to put you into one of 4 age bins. And I think the ranges were under 13, 13 to 16, 16 to 18, and 18 plus. And since it's not requiring any kind of an ID or any kind of age verification, I think what that really means is that whoever is setting this up, the parent or the guardian, can actually set that age range to whatever they want, which basically lets the parent, again, have some kind of control over what they feel their, effective or emotional age of their child is, or if they just don't want to restrict their child, or maybe over-restrict their child. And how that gets updated without being tied to a birthday, I'm not sure. So we'll have to get some more details on this. Again, I think I need to kind of do a whole episode on this and find an expert to interview and really get into the weeds on this and understand why this is such a really thorny problem. But this is a very slippery slope. Of course, we want to try to prevent kids from accessing porn and things like that. But who gets to decide what's porn? I mean, what if it's information about breastfeeding? What if it's information about sexual health or pregnancy or avoiding pregnancy? What if it's just art with naked people in it? And then, of course, once we've got the foothold there, then anything that's objectionable to some politicians could be slipped in. It's a very slippery slope, and it's got lots of problems. But you know what? Let's move on to some good news. We actually have some this week. And first up, this is a really big win. Chat control, the EU law that was set to make all device owners be subjected to on-device scanning of their messages and images and everything, that was thankfully defeated. So let me read this article from Patrick Breyer, who is an MEP from the Pirate Party. As he celebrates this win, this was Patrick's take on it. In a major breakthrough for the digital rights movement, the German government has refused to back the EU's controversial chat control regulation yesterday after facing massive public pressure. The government did not take a position on the proposal. This blocks the required majority in the EU Council, derailing the plan to pass their surveillance law next week. Jens Spahn, chairman of the conservative CDU-CSU parliamentary group in the Bundestag, said in a public statement, quote, "We, the CDU-CSU parliamentary group in the Bundestag, are opposed to the unwarranted monitoring of chats. That would be like opening all letters as a precautionary measure to see if there is anything illegal in them. This is not acceptable, and we will not allow it," unquote. Digital freedom fighter and former member of European Parliament Dr. Patrick Breyer of the Pirate Party hails this as a huge victory, but warns that the fight is far from over. And by the way, again, this is on Patrick Breyer's website, so I'm not sure why he's referring to himself in the third person. I guess maybe this is a press release, but anyway. And this is a quote from Patrick Breyer, quote, "This is a tremendous victory for freedom and proves that protest works. Facing a wave of calls and emails from the public, the Social Democrats are holding their ground, and for the first time, even the conservative leadership is voicing criticism. Without the tireless resistance from citizens, scientists, and organizations, EU governments would have passed a totalitarian mass surveillance law next week, spelling the end for digital privacy. That we stopped this, for now, is a moment to celebrate. Today proves that our protest has the power to stop a totalitarian surveillance system that has no equal in the free world. But the threat is not gone. The proponents of chat control will use every trick in the book and will not give up easily. We will keep fighting until this proposal is defeated once and for all, and the privacy of our digital lives is secure for everyone. Freedom is only as valuable as our willingness to fight for it. Now is the moment to support the civil rights organizations that made this victory possible, so we are prepared for the fight ahead," unquote. This whole process went through a lot of roller coaster stories, basically all based on Germany, because the way the vote worked in the EU is they need a certain percentage of the MEPs to vote for this thing, and Germany was a really big chunk of them. So basically, as Germany went, so would this bill, because there were enough people on both sides that they were the swing country on this vote, basically. And they kind of went up and down on this. It was not clear for a while. In fact, I think at one point Germany said they were going to support it. And then I assume because of a lot of this backlash, they wavered and eventually said no. And because it was obvious that they were not going to have enough votes to pass it, they didn't even have the vote. But as Breyer here is saying, this is definitely not over. We have to remain vigilant. We have to keep the pressure up. And it works. It worked in this case. So do not give up. Stay on top of this. Don't go away thinking this is done. It is not done, I guarantee you. And this should be inspirational for the rest of us when we need to apply this same kind of pressure to other well-intentioned but poorly crafted legislative proposals. We do have a voice. We do have power. And there are organizations out there that will help us get organized and magnify that power, like the EFF and the Center for Democracy and Technology and the Electronic Privacy Information Center. There are several. And by supporting those groups, you are also helping to support these kind of causes. The EU chat control would have been an absolute nightmare. It would have been complete mass surveillance. It undermined end-to-end encryption by compromising the ends, because it's only encrypted between the two ends. At each end, it's unencrypted, which is why they basically wanted to bug all of our devices to look at our pictures and our texts and our chats and emails and all of these things before they got encrypted to surveil us. It would have been horrific. So thank goodness this failed. So yes, we absolutely should celebrate, but we cannot now sit on the sidelines and think we're done, because trust me, this will come back in some other way, and we need to be prepared for the next time. So the governor of California did sign into law that age verification bill, but he also signed into law another bill which was quite good. So this is from Consumer Reports, actually. Governor Gavin Newsom signed the groundbreaking California Opt Me Out Act, AB 566, into law today. The first in the nation law will require browsers to include a setting that enables a consumer to send out an opt-out preference signal, giving Californians a simple way to exercise their digital privacy rights. Opt-out preference signals automatically communicate the consumer's preference not to have their personal information sold or shared with third parties to all of the businesses that a consumer interacts with across a given platform. For example, a user with an opt-out preference signal enabled on their internet browser will automatically send an opt-out request to each website and third party they encounter during a browsing session. While California consumers already enjoy the right to send legally binding opt-out preference signals under the California Consumer Privacy Act, or CCPA, major browsers like Chrome, Safari, and Edge do not offer universal opt-out options in their privacy settings. Without access to universal controls, consumers must opt out at each individual website they visit or download a third-party extension to send the signal. This new law will provide Californians with a more practical way to manage their privacy choices under the CCPA. And this is a quote from Matt Schwartz at Consumer Reports, who says, quote, California continues to lead the way on consumer privacy protection. The California Opt Me Out Act builds on the CCPA by making it far easier for consumers to take advantage of their existing privacy rights in practice. For too long, opting out has been a confusing and time-intensive process, and many people might not have even realized that they can universally opt out. This law will help people protect their personal data by allowing them to simply switch a toggle that tells businesses that they can't sell or share it. We thank Governor Newsom, Assemblymember Josh Lowenthal, and the California Privacy Protection Agency for their leadership in getting this critical legislation past the finish line, unquote. CR, or Consumer Reports, is a founding organization of the Global Privacy Control, or GPC, a browser-level privacy signal designed to allow internet users to notify businesses of their preference not to have their data be sold or shared or used for cross-context behavioral advertising. GPC has been officially recognized by privacy regulators in California, Colorado, Connecticut, and New Jersey as a legally binding opt-out signal under those states' comprehensive privacy laws, and 8 other state laws also allow consumers to exercise opt-out requests through Universal. Recently, the CCPA, along with Attorneys General of California, Colorado, and Connecticut, announced a joint enforcement sweep to investigate potential non-compliance with GPC. Earlier this year, CR published a report highlighting this very issue, which I talked about when that came out. CR is also working on technical solutions to further empower consumers to take control of their data, including through our app called Permission Slip. And that's a great app, by the way. Check out Permission Slip. I've got it on my phone. But this is good news. It's very simple, but it's very powerful. We've had this thing called Global Privacy Control for many, many years now. And before that, we had this thing called Do Not Track, or DNT. And the problem was, it was a great way to, with a single click, go to your browser and say, okay, I want you to tell every website I go to, stop tracking me, don't share my data, don't sell my data. So it was a very easy way for you to tell every place you go automatically, without you having to do anything further, to tell those sites, hey, respect my data. Unfortunately, there were no laws that forced them to do so until recently. And California and Connecticut and Colorado and New Jersey apparently have implemented laws that give you, some privacy rights over your data, and you have a way to do that through this thing called Global Privacy Control. Unfortunately, not all browsers supported this. In other words, there was not a way to go into some browsers, like Chrome, Safari, and Microsoft's Edge. There was nowhere for you to go in the settings to click that button that says, I want you to tell everybody, stop tracking me. There's no way to turn on Global Privacy Control in those browsers, which I'm really surprised Safari doesn't have that. That's bizarre. But anyway, now they're going to have that because California says you must have that, and all these browser makers are going to make that change everywhere. It's not going to just be, the people in California aren't going to be the only people who have that option. However, if you don't live in a jurisdiction where that signal matters, It still won't, be legally binding. However, I still highly recommend that everybody find and turn on global privacy control. I've actually got an article on my website that tells you how to do this and how to verify that it's working. So that is important. But even if you don't live in a jurisdiction where this is mandated, first of all, there are going to be companies that are not in those jurisdictions that will just decide to honor it everywhere. I don't know how many are going to do that, but some will. But also, do it now so that you're also registering your discontent with all this data collection. And finally, if your jurisdiction finally does come under some privacy law where that setting now becomes something they must respect, you'll be set. So I'll put a link in the show notes for my article on this, as well as my article on credit freezes. All right, one more quick good story here, and this is from The Record, and it's another victory for the CCPA. The California Privacy Protection Agency, or CCPA, on Tuesday announced that a large national retailer has agreed to pay $1.35 million to resolve allegations that it violated California consumer privacy law for a host of violations, including by not giving people the right to opt out of having their personal data sold and shared. Tractor Supply Company also allegedly failed to publish a privacy policy, notified job applicants of their privacy rights, and shared personal data with third parties without permission. In addition to paying the fine, Tractor Supply Company has agreed to change its business practices, appoint a company official to certify compliance for the next 4 years, and ensure it is not using tracking technologies. The fine is the largest ever to be secured by the CCPA. That's it. That's the whole article. But it's good. It's great. And I put it in here because it's crucial to understand that not only do we need to pass these laws, we actually have to have a referee that is enforcing these laws with teeth that causes these companies to pay a real fine that means something to them that will hopefully cause them to comply. So if there are other companies out there in California who all of a sudden see this news story about TSC having to pay a lot of money, maybe they'll look into their own practices and make sure that they're not running afoul of this as well to avoid those fines. So there's lots of things that goes into laws like this actually being able to do what they're supposed to do. And one of those is that we can actually hold these people to account and make them pay penalties that matter when they fail. So again, thanks to California for doing all that they're doing. A lot of us outside California are getting the benefits of some of these things, even though we don't live there. But man, it sure would be nice if we had federal laws that were along these lines so that we could all get this benefit in the U.S. All right, and now it's time for my tip of the week. And as always, there's a longer, more detailed article about this on my website, firewallsdon'tstopdragons.com. If you're a newsletter subscriber, you've already got this sitting in your inbox. But this is the next in my rather long series about how to find and deal with and protect and perhaps delete all your old accounts, like all your old accounts. If you missed the start of this series for some reason, you can find all the articles on firewallsdon'tstopdragons.com. If you go to today's tip of the week, which will take you to today's article in that series, it also has links to all the previous articles. So just to catch you up, what we want to do here is we want to try to find all of our old online accounts. And I mean all of them, like your old AOL account or Prodigy account, accounts that you've probably forgotten you even had, but probably still exist because you never explicitly closed them. Those accounts have data, have some of your data, and any data that is still out there can still be abused. And as we found with AI, we keep coming up with new ways to abuse people's data, like finding all this personal data that these companies have access to and thinking, oh, I could train my AI models based on this data. And they probably changed their privacy policies to say, oh, you now allow us, by continuing to do nothing, you thereby give us permission to train our AI models on all of your third-party data or sell it or whatever, all the things we've been doing over the years. But my point being, it is never too late to clean up your data, because the only data that cannot be abused or sold or leaked is data that doesn't exist. So we want to find all these old accounts, identify them, enumerate them, get into them, and see what's there. That's basically what we've done so far to date. So what do we want to do next? Well, first and foremost, if these are really old accounts, you probably have crappy passwords on them. So before you do anything else, make sure that you update the passwords on these accounts to be long, strong, and unique. To do that correctly, you really need a password manager. And one of my first articles talks about how to set that up. And so you want to make sure that they are secure. And if you can, on some of these old accounts, if there's a two-factor authentication option, that would be another great thing to put on that account. So first and foremost, go through each of these old accounts, make sure that they are secure, that you've updated the password and you've added any extra security steps that you can find to make it more secure. And even if you think you're eventually going to completely delete that account, which means, by the way, that you're going to request that your account be deleted and request that your data be deleted and hope that they actually follow through on that, even if you plan to do that, you should still secure this account just to be sure. So once you're into these accounts, once you've updated security, look around and see what data is still in there. See if there's old emails, old messages, old files, old photos. See if those accounts are linked to any other accounts. And I would suggest maybe that you try to find a mechanism within that online account to either export your data or download your data or request a copy of your data, just so that you have it. And maybe set aside a folder somewhere on some backed up external hard drive or something where you can start collecting all of this old data. And then you won't feel so bad about deleting it because hopefully you'll have these backup copies. Some of this data download or export stuff can take time. In some cases, you'll have to make a request for your data and wait for them to send you an email saying, okay, we've gathered up all your data into this download. Click this link to download all your data. That may take some time. But go through each of your accounts. Again, once you've regained access to these accounts and you look through your accounts, kind of poke around, see what's there. If you can, request a copy of your data or export your data. Collect all this data somewhere. Go ahead and poke around in there. Just make sure that what they sent you really does look like all your data and it's in a format that you can actually use. And then you'll know that you are ready to go back and potentially delete or maybe suspend some of those old accounts. And that will actually be the subject of my last article in this series and will be my next tip of the week. So again, for more details and links and helpful information, go to firewallsdon'tstopdragons.com and find my most recent article on this. And of course, if you haven't done the other ones again, there will be links to all of those articles as well. All right, that's your news and your tip of the week. All right, we are caught up. Thank you for bearing with me as I took a much-needed vacation. And this is how I think I'm going to do this going forward. I definitely need to take a little more time off here and there. And I think what I will do in those cases is I will just do 3 interviews in a row and skip a news show and then have a catch-up news show. Now, if you want your information in a more timely manner, you can follow me on social media. I am kind of sadly still on Twitter, but I'm also on Blue Sky and I am on Mastodon and on LinkedIn. So of course, being a privacy person, I don't like a lot of social media, but I also need to be there for you because that's where a lot of you are. So if you want more timely and more urgent information, that's where I tend to post it. And my news stories are really kind of retroactive and kind of looking back at things that have happened and trying to relate to you why those things are important. All right, so we're wrapping up the year. I've got a few more really great interviews for you before we get into December when I try to take the month off and we do some really fun best of episodes and some classic replays. But next week, we're going to hear from Eamon McGuire. He is the head of AI at Proton, and they have come out with their privacy-oriented chatbot called Lumo. So we're going to talk about that. And after that, we're going to do one more big interview about critical infrastructure. And trust me, it was a big interview. I had a panel of 4 guests, which is the biggest panel I have ever done. But they are all very smart people who are very good communicators. And we talk a little bit more about why critical infrastructure is so important and what these groups are doing to help shore up these national resources. And then after that, it'll be right around Black Friday when the holiday shopping season really goes into full swing. And so I will be doing my best and worst gift guide episode. And this year, I'm not doing it alone. I've actually got 3 wonderful people from Consumer Reports, including Yael Grauer and Stacy Higginbotham, who I've interviewed before. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. We're going to give you our tips for the best and worst gifts related to security and privacy for you and your loved ones this season. I'm really looking forward to that. That's going to be so fun. And then finally, one more interview before the end of the year. I've already recorded it. It's with 2 great guys from Frack magazine who are celebrating their 40th year of their wonderful hacker e-zine, and they've got some great stories to tell. So lots of great interviews in the pipeline. I've got even more of them already booked for next year. So much great stuff. Be sure to subscribe, and then you won't miss any of that. That's it. That'll do it this week. Take care, everybody. Stay safe out there. And until next week, as always, don't get caught with your garbage down.